To today's webinar. I am very excited to have you on today's program. It is called Don't Say That, Say This. 5 techniques to instantly improve your prospecting and closing skills over the phone. And by the way, I just want to say that I put this webinar together because over the last few months I've been listening to hundreds of inside sales recordings. These are by reps just like yourselves. And if you have a sales team, they're by teams just like yourself. And over again, I hear sales reps saying the wrong things that just make their jobs harder. Now, and when you look at them, it might make sense to say them, but what I'm going to do today is to show you why they don't work. And here's the good news, instead, to give you better ways of handling those situations. We have got a full program today. We have almost 850 customers and clients and prospects and sales reps, and man, it's great to have you on the call. Many of my clients are on the call. I'd like to say hello to all of you. So here's what I'm going to recommend you do so you can get the most out of today's program, and more importantly, to begin using these techniques right after you get off this webinar. Get a pen, get something to write with, and be prepared to take some notes. I'm going to give you a chance to write these things down, so make sure and put them down as we go there. So let's go ahead and get started, and here we go. Oh, by the way, before we get into today's program, I oftentimes get emails at the end from people who are asking me how they can get more information, how they can get free information. And here are 3 free resources to help all of you sell more over the phone. Number 1, if you're not getting my weekly Inside Sales, I call it an e-zine, if you're not getting it, then you need to sign up today. Simply go to that website right there, my homepage, MrInsideSales.com. Sign up for my free e-zine, and you're going to get 2 things. Number 1, every week you are going to get scripts. You're going to get proven techniques that are going to help you sell easier over the phone, and they're free. You can't beat that. Second of all, when you do sign up, I'm going to give you a $19 ebook. It is called 10 Techniques to Make You Closer of the Month. You'll get that ebook for free the moment you sign up for my weekly e-zine. Number 2, on my homepage, and this is the exact website address, mrinsideSales.com/webinartraining.htm, I'm going to give you some free training webinars on phone scripts, closing techniques, and many, many more. So if you like the information you're going to see here today, and if you haven't seen these webinars, by all means jump onto that page and you're going to get some free webinars. Last but not least, have any of you been to my Inside Sales Training blog? There's the address. You'll find that on my homepage at the bottom of my page under Site Links. I have listed all of the articles and scripts that I have written over the past 7 years, and they're all cataloged. You can search for them. Need scripts on cold calling? You'll find some there. Closing? You'll find them there. This is a treasure trove of information to help you sell more, so take advantage of this and improve your own sales skills today. Okay. We're a few minutes into the webinar. Most of the people have arrived now. There are literally hundreds of companies and individual sales reps on the call. I'd like to welcome all of you today. I hope you're having a nice winter, and I hope you're ready to learn to get better. So let's start at the very beginning. Let's talk about what you're going to learn today. Number 1, hey, you may have heard me say this before, but I like to reiterate it. Practice doesn't make perfect. It only makes permanent. If you're a sales manager or a business owner or a sales rep, then you know this is true. Guess what? Many sales reps and sales teams are using the incorrect skills, techniques that are only causing resistance or not allowing them to qualify their prospects, or they're handling objections incorrectly, or they're not closing sales properly. And guess what? They think that if they just speak to more prospects, they'll get more deals. That's not true. If you're not practicing good selling skills, then you're not going to get better with that next phone call. Only practice of perfection makes perfect. Again, if you're just practicing poor selling skills, they're going to become permanent. In fact, you're going to suddenly and automatically be poor at sales. In other words, it's kind of like golfing. If you practice the wrong swing, it's going to be easy for you to not do well out on the golf course. It's the same thing here. So what I'm going to give you today are better techniques that if you use them and if you practice them, they will make you a perfect sales rep because they work. Now here's the best thing of all about today. Small adjustments equal big improvements. Hey, you don't have to learn everything today. If you just get better at a few small key techniques, it will have a big impact on how you connect with prospects, how you overcome resistance by not creating it. It will help you close sales easier at the end because you won't be handling those same responses incorrectly. So again, small adjustments can and will lead to big improvements. Hang on just a moment. All right, I'm back with you. Number 3, I'm now going to give you 5 techniques that will make you better on every single call you make. Once again, what I need you to do is to begin using them. And by the way, I just want to give you one caveat. I want you to take the techniques I'm going to give you and use them as they are. Now, if you need to adjust a word or two to make them fit your personality or style, then do that. But then use them over and over again, and you're going to get better. Okay, get your pens out, get something to write down with on something, and here we go. Prospecting techniques. Now, please don't say, hey, I wonder if I caught you at a good time, or hey, is this time good for you to speak? Now, I again hear hundreds of recorded conversations every single month. My clients send me from all different industries actual recordings of their sales reps, and then I critique them. I put them into a sales meeting, and I correct them and offer better techniques, more successful techniques. I can't tell you how often I still hear this. Hey, I wonder if I caught you at a good time. Now, at first glance, you might think to yourself, well, hey, I'm being respectful of someone's time. I'm barging into their day. I know they're busy. I don't want to just start blabbering on. That's going to turn them off and raise resistance. So what I'm going to do is politely ask if this is a good time or if they have some time to speak. Hey, it's just makes sense, right? Okay, now I totally get the reasoning behind that. It's certainly nice to be polite, and if any of you have read my material or have worked with me, then you know I'm huge on using please and thank you and being polite. But what you don't want to do when you're cold calling is introduce an objection. Hey, when somebody calls me, a salesperson that I've never spoken to, the very first thing I do is groan, because most of them have horrible openings. But if they say to me, hey, did I catch you at a good time, I immediately take that out and say, no, actually, I'm busy right now. Why don't you call me back? Never. In fact, give me your name and phone number. Let me call you. Okay, so again, you don't want to lead off by offering your prospect a way out. So, well, what should I do? Glad you asked. Here's what you should say instead. Hi, John. Hey, I know you're busy, so let me briefly ask you just one thing. We provide whatever you provide to your target market, and, it may help you too. Quick question. How do you currently, or when was the last time you, or one of my favorite questions, would you be the right person to speak to regarding this? Okay, I'm going to give you a moment to write that down, and I'm going to tell you why this is much better. Number one, you're acknowledging immediately, hey, John, I know you're busy, so let me briefly ask you just one thing. That sentence is music to your prospect's ears. Number one, most of your competition use very poor technique when they open their calls, and we're going to address this in number 3. Instead, what they do, as soon as they get a prospect on the phone, they go into a monologue, and you're going to hear more about that soon. They rarely acknowledge that the prospect maybe wasn't expecting their call or might not have time, so they don't acknowledge that at all. The reason they don't is because they don't know how to do it. So you're going to do it here. Hey, I know you're busy. Let me briefly ask you just one thing. So already you're letting your prospect know that you do respect their time. You do know that they're busy, and you're going to be brief. Heck, you're just going to ask one question. So that's a beautiful thing already. And then what you do is you give them a quick value proposition and to their target market or their competition, and then you say, hey, it may help you to quick question. And then you immediately ask a qualifying question. How do you currently, when was the last time, who are you currently using now? Are you the right person to speak to in regards to this? By the way, that last question, are you the right person to speak to regarding this, is gold. Again, I can't tell you how many calls I listen to where the sales rep just starts pitching the very first person who answers the phone. And many times after they get through their pitch, that person says, well, this isn't even the right department. And we wouldn't be interested anyway. Well, you just lost that opportunity because you never qualified whom you were speaking with. But again, the other reason this technique works so well is you are immediately giving your prospect an opportunity to interact with you. And hey, if they're busy, if they're in the middle of something, if they don't have the time to talk to you, which is what those other techniques were trying to get at, by asking a question early, guess what? They're going to tell you if they're busy or if they don't have time. So you still get to do the same thing. You still find out whether they have time for you, but using this technique, what you're not doing is giving them an out. Again, you're qualifying, you're allowing them to engage, you're letting them know that you know they're busy. This is a much better technique that should replace the previous one. Okay, number 2. Prospecting, say, hey, how do you like this little graphic I found on the internet? Say this, not that. Isn't that cool? Okay, say this, don't say that. So don't say, hey, I'm calling to just learn a little bit more about your company. Okay, I think this is the new social media opening. I've heard this with a lot of high-tech clients I've been working with now. And let me preface it by saying this. First of all, again, I get the intent. I really do. This is a consultative approach, right? Rather than me calling to try and sell you, hey, I'm calling to learn a little bit about you. Gosh, it makes sense to me, right? Yeah, hey, I'd just like to know a little bit more about your company to see if we might be a fit and see if we might be able to, if it might make sense to continue our conversation. And, right, I mean, hey, it just makes all the sense in the world. Why in the heck wouldn't that work, Mike? What do you mean don't use that? Here's why. The most important quality or quantity that your prospect has, and you too, is time. It's the thing that they have the least of. Or think about any of the prospects that you're calling. They have 100 things going on. They've got pressures. They've got departments and people they need to answer to. They have their job. They have deadlines. They have projects. They have so much going on. The last thing that they have an excess of is time. It's the last thing they have. The last thing that I have. When somebody calls me, a salesperson who has their own agenda, a salesperson who just wants to sell me, so I didn't call them, they called me. And they say to me, Mike, I'd like to learn a little bit more about your company. Sometimes I say, terrific, I'm $500 an hour. When would you like to get started, and which credit card would you like to use? I mean, I don't have time for that, and neither does your prospect. So when you call somebody who's already got 100 things going on, and you say, hey, I'm calling to learn a little bit more about your company, your prospect is groaning. They're thinking, oh, dear, why did I pick up the phone? I don't know. Again, it's a nice intent. It makes sense, but it doesn't translate into being effective. So stop doing that. Stop alienating your prospect at the very beginning. Instead, say this. Hey, John, we help companies do X, Y, Z, and I just have a quick question to easily find out if this would be a fit for you as well. How do you currently, when was the last time, and are you the right person to speak to? Now, again, you can change these questions up and fit them to your product or service. Rather than when was the last time, you might say, hey, who are you currently using now, or when was the last time you checked on, or you can use them. But here's why this is effective, okay? It's quick. It's short. John, we help companies process their leads faster, and I just have a quick question to easily find out if this would be a fit for you as well. Hey, that word easily is what every prospect business person you're talking with who has 1,000 things going on, that's music to their ears. Quickly. You can, in fact, change that to the easily to quickly. Hey, I quickly have a question for you. I have a quick question for you, to easily find out if this would be a fit for you as well. And then you qualify. And again, feel free to change that qualifying question to fit your product or service. So the beautiful thing about this technique is, A, you're letting them know what you do, how you help. B, you're letting them know you've got a quick and easy way to find out whether it's worth continuing the conversation. They'll love that. C, you get to ask a qualifying question, which means you get to learn something about your prospect, which is crucial. And D, you're giving your prospect an opportunity to interact with you quickly. Quickly. They can either transfer you to the right department, let you know that this isn't something they would ever be interested in, or let you know they don't have the time, or they can answer the question, allowing you to continue qualifying. Use this technique, make it quick, and easily connect with your prospect rather than asking for something they don't have enough of already, which is time. Okay, here's prospecting technique number 3. I told you we'd get to this. Please don't start your calls like this. Hi, John. Hey, the reason for my call today is that we provide accounting solutions for companies that process more than 150 employees in a month. Our solution is ideal for companies like yours in that we can save you both time and money handling the prospect is probably on mute snoring right now. You see, here's the thing, guys and gals. This doesn't work. This is unfortunately how most sales reps still do this. What do? They start a monologue. Somebody has sat in their office and put together a script that sure sounds good on paper, and then they give it to their sales reps, and they say, hey, you need to get our value proposition across. You gotta, and by the way, this isn't just me saying this. There are sales trainers out there that I read their scripts. I read some of their openings. I read their books. And their opening is like this. It goes on and on and on before they finally say, let's just call and see if it might make sense for us to continue. They have obviously not made a cold call in probably 10, 15 years. I make cold calls every day, by the way. I am fresh at this, and I know what works, and I listen to other people, other companies using these techniques. They don't work. So please don't start your calls like this. Get your pens out, and here's what you say instead. Hey, John, the reason I'm calling is just to see if you'd be a good candidate for what we do. Bob, in a nutshell, we have a super easy solution that saves companies about 15% monthly in the way they process their employee checks. Let me ask you just 2 quick questions. And I'm going to give you the questions on the next slide, but I want you to write this down. Let's talk about why this is effective. The reason I'm calling is to see if you'd be a good fit for what we do. Bob, in a nutshell. Okay, what that tells them is that you're going to give them a very brief explanation of what you do. In a nutshell, we have a super easy solution. Again, you don't have to use these words. Adapt them to your product or solution. But I've got news for you. Words like easy, solution, super easy, very easy, quick solution, simple solution. These words are music to your prospects' ears. They love things that are easy and quick. Everybody does. That saves can give a benefit, saves companies as much as 15% in the way they process. Well, I ask you 2 quick questions and then move on to your questions. 1, who are you using now to process your employee statements? 2, and if we can save you 15%, how open would you be to seeing if this would be a fit for you? Now let's break these down here. This first question, who are you using now to process your employee payments? This is a very important question because it qualifies. First of all, it qualifies whether or not they even use a company to process their employee paychecks. In other words, do they even use a company for you that would be for your product or service? In other words, if you're offering life insurance, do you currently have a life insurance policy? Are you currently working with a life insurance broker? So you want to qualify whether the prospect even is a candidate for what you do. So you ask that qualifying question up front. And by the way, when you ask a qualifying question, once again, you're allowing your prospect to interact with you. Interact with you. That's crucial. Most people, they don't allow interaction. It's a monologue. Number 2, hey, if we could also save you money, how open would you be to seeing if this would be a fit for you? And by the way, as you can see, you can change these questions. Rather than who are you using now to process employee payments, or for number 2, you could ask, are you the best person in your company to speak to about this? How do you get involved in that? You can begin qualifying. Hey, if we can save you that too, how open would you be to seeing if this would be a fit for you? There's a nice open-ended, assumptive kind of question. Judge their interest, gauge their interest, see if they even want or have the need for what it is you're pitching. So once again, what we're doing here very, very quickly, and we're letting them know it's going to be quick, in a nutshell, super easy solution. We're getting to our point quickly. We're giving our value prop, telling them the reason for the call, and then boom, we're immediately engaging our prospects and allowing them to interact with us. Again, I'll just say this one last time. Of the hundreds of recordings I listen to every single month, one of the biggest problems sales reps have is that they do not engage the prospect. And this is especially true during the close, by the way. Most closes are monologues with a few very old school and ineffective tie-downs thrown in for good measure, and then there's one closing attempt, an objection, and then that's it. And you can't close sales that way. And again, on the opening of the call, there are very few areas for interaction as well. You absolutely have to change that, begin using solid techniques, and then practicing that perfection on each and every call. Okay, prospecting techniques don't say, hey, are you the person who would be making the decision on something like this? Now, you know as well as I do that you obviously need to qualify prospects for buying motives and possible competition, decision makers, time frame, budget. There are 6 main qualifiers, and certainly decision maker is one of them. Now, here's the problem, and once again, I hear this more times than I'd like to. When somebody actually remembers to ask a qualifying question, which isn't all the time, but when somebody remembers to do that, they generally ask a qualifying question like this in a closed-ended way. Are you the person who'd be making the decision on something like this? That's a closed-ended question requiring a yes or no answer. Most prospects will then just say yes to avoid any further questioning. But you know as well as I do that prospects rarely make the final decision. Even if they claim to be the VP of sales, they're still going to check with the boss. And even if they're the property manager, they're still going to check with corporate. And even if they're head of the department, they still need to check with someone else or run it by their workmates. Hey, you check with other people when you make decisions as well. So let's throw that sentence away. And here's what you should be saying instead. Hey, John, besides yourself, who else would weigh in on a decision like this? Now, you see, this is very important. Besides yourself, who else would weigh in on a decision like this? Now, what this is an assumptive question. What this does is assume that, guess what, your prospect doesn't make decisions in a vacuum. They're likely going to check in with other people. And I've got news for you. You would rather find this out now at the beginning of the prospecting stage rather than 45 or 50 minutes into a closing presentation a week later to have them then tell you that they need to check in with someone else. All right? You need to know that going in along with the other 5 qualifiers. You need to have the right questions to ask them to figure these things out. This is the right way to ask that. All right, hang on for 1 second. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, now let's go to number 5, and guess what? Oh, sorry. I've got some more for you right here. So, and besides yourself, who else would weigh in on a decision like this? And if they tell, well, I'm going to have to speak to, the head of the department, why not layer this question with, and how do you figure into that, Larry? So in other words, get an idea of how much of an influence they might have on that decision. Are you with me on that? So you can layer, and this is just one example I put in here. There are many, many other layering questions that you now get to ask. Because guess what? In the beginning, you asked an open-ended assumptive question. That's what this gives you. Okay, so let's go to number 5. Here's a closing technique for you. Please don't respond to the following objection. Hey, I'll run this by my regional manager and see what he says with, hey, well, when should I get back to you on that? Again, you can change this up. They might say, hey, I need to run this by my boss. I need to run this by my partner. I need to run this by my manager. I need to run this by corporate. I need to run this by whomever else. Okay? Again, if you use the first technique, then you already know there are multiple decision makers, and you've already figured out what type of influence this person has. But if you miss that step and you find yourself in this position over and over and over again, please do not give control of the sale over to your prospect by saying, okay, and when should I get back with you? When you do that, you relinquish all control. You relinquish any ability to then close the sale on this call. Plus, you don't learn anything. So when you get this stall, which is a very, very popular one these days, you should instead respond with this. Terrific. And hey, by the way, if he gives you the okay to move on this, what other questions might you have for me? Now, this is a great question. This is a really nice open-ended question which doesn't ask for a decision, right? It's not assumptive in that way, and I know that some of you have read, and in fact, I've written this too, and this is just yet another technique. Hey, if he gives you the okay, what would you do? Or is this something you would move on? Those are perfectly okay questions to ask. This is a little softer way. What this gets at is this helps uncover what other objections there still might be standing in the way of him or her moving forward with this program or your product or service. Hey, terrific, and if he gives you the okay to move on this, what other questions might you have for me? So what this does is, if that is a smokescreen objection, I need to speak to someone else, because they're not yet convinced to move with you, this is the kind of question that's going to open them up to voicing some of those concerns. Or you can say, okay, great, let me ask you, based on what you've seen so far, what would you tend to do if the decision were up to you? Now, this is a great trial close. It's non-threatening, and yet it asks for something very specific. And don't forget, you can soften this. You can rewrite this so that it fits your personality. But keep the spirit of this. All right, great. Let me ask you, and I love this line, based on what you've seen so far. Okay, so it's not asking them for a decision. Now, what would you tend to do? See, there's a nice softener. What would you tend to do if the decision were up to you? So this basically says, how do you like it, and what's your vote? But it says it in, again, a non-threatening way. That's a great way to do this. And if he says, well, yeah, hey, I'd move on it, great. And how much influence do you have with your regional in deciding on something like this? So now, and again, this is information you should have gotten during the qualification stage when you ask them besides yourself who else weighs in on this. Then you can use these questions. But again, if you skip that step and you get ambushed with it here at the end, make sure and learn as much as you can. Based on what you've seen so far, what would you do? Well, I'd do great. Well, just out of curiosity, how much influence do you have with your regional in deciding on something like this? You can also change that. What did they say the last time you brought them something like this? Or, well, great. I'm glad that you're on board. What can I do to help make sure that he or she agrees with us? Or, hey, do you think it would help if I went and ahead and gave them a call and explained some of the points and answered their questions as well? One of the things that I like to say sometimes is, heck, hey, I don't want you to do my job for me. Why don't I go ahead and give them a call? If it's okay with you, I'll be happy to call them and explain this. Do you think that would go over okay? So there are so many things that you can say if you're prepared. Remember I said at the beginning that sales is a series of skills. And if you learn small, proven, effective skills and techniques like these, small changes will have a huge impact on your calls. Once again, I listen to hundreds of recordings every month, and I hear over and over and over again, I hear sales reps making it hard on themselves. I hate when that happens, don't you? You don't have to do it like that anymore, everyone. You can learn and use the proper skills and then practice perfection. Hey, remember, 80% of the objections you got yesterday, you're going to get tomorrow. They're all the same. Take some time to invest in yourself. Remember, practice doesn't make perfect. It makes permanent. So if you're using any of the above don't say this statements, stop it and instead change it to something that's going to help you get better. Small adjustments are going to equal big improvements. Don't take my word for it. Try these techniques this afternoon or first thing tomorrow. If you're on the West Coast, try them this afternoon. You'll see for yourself that these are going to make you better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take some questions, but before I do, I've got a phenomenal offer for you. If any of you have read or not purchased yet my complete book of phone scripts, I'm going to give you this offer. You're going to get my complete book of phone scripts plus $500 worth of downloads from top sales trainers. This is a $550 value. I'm going to send you a link right now in your window right there for just $49. You are going to get 130 pages of scripts, over 220 scripts just in this complete book of phone scripts, and then you're going to get bonuses from other people. Let me show you what you're going to get here. Number one, you're going to get the #1 phone script book in the world. There is no more powerful phone script book anywhere. In fact, these scripts, which were taken from my ultimate book of phone scripts, revised for last year, they're the most current on the market today. This was by Brian Tracy, called the most important book of phone scripts he's seen in a long time. The American Association of Inside Sales Professionals recommends my book of phone scripts. Number 2, 130 pages. All these scripts are new, revised, and updated scripts. You're going to get scripts that are going to help you deal with prospecting and qualifying. You're going to learn what to say to all the objections that you get. I'm not interested. I don't have the time. Could you just send me something by email? I'm going to have to show that. You're going to know exactly, word for word, what to say. You're going to get scripts that deal with closing sales, how to close sales, how to deal with the objections, how to overcome stalls. You're going to instantly improve. You're going to get objection and resistance scripts, word-for-word scripts to handle any situation you run into right now. Hey, voicemail scripts, email scripts. It's all here for you today. Plus, anybody ever heard of Jeffrey Gitomer? He is a phenomenal sales trainer. He's giving away an ebook on listening skills. Stan Ballou, my personal mentor, the king of telemarketing, Mr. Fantastic himself, you're going to get something from him. Wendy Weiss, my good friend and colleague, she's going to give you a bonus. Tom Hopkins, Jeb Blunt, Kendra Lee, all of these top sales trainers are going to give you a bonus. Can we see somebody saying, can you send it to the UK? No, this is an ebook. You're going to download this. You'll have it in 5 minutes, Jamie or James. Complete book of phone scripts right here. Click on that link. For $49, you are going to get a downloadable link, and you're going to have 130 scripts in your email box in the next 5 minutes. Give this to your sales team. Heck, buy each and every one of them a copy. Tell them to download it, study it, learn it, to customize these scripts and to begin practicing perfection. And then begin making your way through these $500 worth of MP3 bonuses and ebooks and all the things you're going to get from these phenomenal sales trainers. Hey, anybody who knows me knows that I like to give value. I'm going to give you $550 worth of value for $49. And then more importantly, I'm going to give you proven techniques and scripts that are going to make you thousands and thousands of dollars over your career. So again, if you haven't gotten these yet, then you need to get it immediately, and this is what you get, the complete book of phone scripts. Move on this now. You'll always be happy that you did. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take some questions here. Will these scripts work with network marketing purchased lead calls? Absolutely they will. Are they specific to network marketing? No. I'll give you a tip right now for network marketing. Well, you never ask somebody if they'd like to make extra money. Instead, you ask them who they might know that would be interested in working from home and generating anywhere from $400 to $500 to $1,000 in extra income a month. Who do you know? You always ask it that way, and then if that prospect is interested, then they'll say, well, gee, I might be able to do that. What do you got? That's how you ask that question. But will you get word-for-word scripts to overcome objections? Absolutely, absolutely you will. They're all here. Invest in yourself. It'll be the best investment you make. All right, so the questions are rolling in here. If the decision makers gives you an absolute no, would you follow up with them or move on? Please advise on the best judgment for these types of calls. If the decision maker says, no, I'm not doing it, no. If they say, no, they're not doing it, I say, hey, and here's my best script for this. Let me take a sip of water, give you the best answer yet. If the decision maker, if I'm closing a deal and I say, hey, let's get you started, and I go through the various objections and they finally say, Mike, I'm not doing it, then what I like to say is, you know, John, I love to learn. I really do. I love to learn. Would you mind if I asked why not? And if you ask it in that way, they will tell you 9 times out of 10 exactly why they don't want to do this. Now, Nina says, can we order the book after the webinar? If you write down that link, mrinsidesales.com/completescripts.htm, then Craig, as soon as this webinar is over, you may absolutely order this program for Nina the same price. Absolutely. This is an offer I have on my website right now, and I'm going to leave it up for a little while after the webinar because people are going to watch the replay and want to take advantage of it. Okay, what do you do if a prospect or customer hangs up? You know what? It depends on the kind of mood that I'm in. If it's early in the day and I'm filled with energy, I'll call them right back and I say, oh, sorry, John, you must have gotten so excited about my offer, you must have dropped the phone and accidentally hung up. Hey, you know, here's why I'm calling. You see how I did that? I did that with a laughter in my voice. And believe me, that has gotten some people to turn right around and say, oh, all right, what do you got? So that's what I do when a prospect or customer hangs up on me. How do you handle small business owners that want to do something but who struggle with budget? Show value? Well, you know, value is always part of the pitch, but if budget is the last thing, and that's the very first thing I do, and this is what you're going to learn in this book of phone scripts on, pardon me, closing sales. When you get an objection, job one is not to answer the objection. Yeah, see, most people think, well, gee, when you get the objection, you got to answer it, you got to handle it, you got to overcome it. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's the wrong thing to do. And again, you'll learn this when you buy the script book. What you do instead is you need to isolate the objection. Isolate it. Because guess what? Most objections you get from prospects, and you know this to be true, many of them turn out not to be real objections. Instead, they turn out to be smoke screens. There's something else going on. And by the way, price is probably one of the most used smoke screens of all. Price. Most prospects will throw price out there because they're not sold or there's another underlying objection. So if somebody says that they can't afford it, you say, well, let me ask you a question, John. Let's say that you could afford this. Let's say that this was in the budget that you had ready to spend. If you could afford it today, or if the price was more in alignment with what it is you wanted to pay, do you think that this solution is the one that you would go with? So let's start there. Let's start there. And then if they still say no, right, or better yet, if they say yes, well, yeah, I mean, if it was so-and-so, I would. Then I say, terrific. Well, let's talk about where you can get the money. I'm sure that there are other budgets that you have, maybe in marketing or in processing or in this or in that. Let me ask you this question. What do you do when something comes up that you want to purchase, but you just don't have that budget allotted for it? Where do you get the money from for something like that? Those are some techniques of how I deal with small business owners who claim they can't afford it. So Jennifer's asking, are you going to send a recording of this webinar? Yes, I am. I certainly am. In fact, that's a great question. I'm going to end the recording because I don't want this file to be too long. But yes, I am going to send a recording of this webinar out. You will all get it in about a day or two. It takes a while for a GoToWebinar to send it out. But you will get a recording of this. When you do, share it with your workmates. Share it with your other team members. Send it to your managers or business owners and let them see how valuable this kind of training can be for you and your team. And one last thing I'll say before I end the recording, and don't worry, I'll stay on for a few more questions, is you owe it to yourself to invest in yourself and get my complete book of phone scripts here, top 20% techniques, 130 pages, scripts to deal with. Get this today. You'll always be happy you did, and this offer will be valid when you do. All right, I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'm going to come back to questions, so hang on just a moment.